warm welcome to Agric today on Aaes and television in Abuja, Nigeria. I am Khadija On today's episode of the program, we shall be taking a look at Nifaas, an association that is solely meant for agricultural extension work. Today, they have come together as a body to fine-tune the activities of the agricultural extension worker to see what is needed, what is being done, and the way forward. Let's go into the role and hear from the participants. Come with me.
Of positioning extension in the agricultural space is so important that we have this conversation today. I have adequately represented extension in the Presidential Livestock Reforms Implementation Committee where I had the opportunity. And every of our transactions has element of engagement, interactions that are influencing policy, shaping policy, and for the good of our country, and by extension Africa, because we learn lessons. It is very important that we operationalize these concepts so that our conversation will transcend the vulnerabilities that we have to shift from how to the impact that we want agriculture to engender for us. So I want to say that we quickly shift to take on by giving the opportunity for our speakers to add value to this conversation so that knowledge management and the issue of strategies and what they will be discussing will shape our final direction. You need to unleash media to set agenda. I didn't mean these media organizations are here now to listen to all that you are saying. Sir, it will hit the headlines tomorrow. And you will see they will be running helter-skelter to address it. But we're not doing that. So if you don't invest in the media, we'll be wasting our time. We'll be talking to ourselves annually like that and no result. I didn't mean we even initiate a conversation on this policy. Call one or two people who have nothing to fear to appear on 2-3 prime TVs to say we want to have a conversation about what happened post 2023 extension week in Nigeria. We want to discuss these things. Believe me sincerely, the result will appear. This thing should not be swept under the carpet. But some of us are already in trouble because we have accepted to be part of government activities. So we could not be part, but those of you are free from the, it's true. Those of you are free, you should talk, speak out. When we were grantees of Mercator in those years, we noticed later, Packard Foundation, Ford Foundation, all of them came together, that there used to be a deception. Mr. A will collect grants from one foundation, collect another one from another foundation. So you realize that one NGO will have 3 grants from different donors to address the same issue. So they became smart that they have to now come together and then act together so that they know what A is doing, they know what B is doing, so that if you now put up adverts, no single person can benefit across the NGOs and be donors. So the idea is that we must cooperate, we must of necessity collaborate and not compete. So cooperative collaboration is very critical. And finally, we must also expand our networks so that whatever Nifaas is doing, Nifaas is in collaboration with Rusan, with Essen. We are not going to be competitors. We are not going to be rivals. We must be collaborators for the good of extension in Nigeria.
The strength that Nifaas has, the strength of number. Now we have the agricultural extension policy. We have a number of strengths. We have the policy from the federal government, and we have stakeholders. Prof mentioned stakeholders, different stakeholders, both vertically and horizontally, that we can leverage to save the situation before us. But in all this, he also mentioned some contradictions. What are those contradictions? These are contradictions that are limiting us, and they are the one hindering us, barring us from getting to that promised land. Those contradictions, he mentioned one, as food importation. No one will hear all this and will not feel somehow emotional. You want to be touched by the state of the food system in Nigeria. Prof said, I am passionate. Every time I present this, it touches me. And truly it touches to know that as we are here in Nigeria, we still have 45% of our food imported. And yet, during peak season of some of the crops, you see gluts in the market. You see excesses, food being wasted. And yet we have food importation that's very high. And we also add that as it is here in Nigeria, we have more than 30 million of us in acute hunger. It's endemic. More than 30 million of us in acute hunger. And yet we are here as extension workers. And yet we project agriculture to the world and say, okay, 70% of our people are into agriculture. How do we relate this? Does it really correlate? It doesn't to me. Because as we are moving this way, we progress to retrogress. We move five steps forward and maybe 10 steps backward. And so we find ourselves parabolating in a point. So I now ask myself that do we really understand what we should do as extension worker? Do we really know that this situation, these contradictions, as obvious as they are, as bad as they are, do we really know that we can really provide some solution that will be meaningful and significant, that will, change the situation? Do we really know? And what can we do? So I put it down, also inferring from what Prof presented. So I said, extension, Nifaas especially, bringing it down to Nifaas. First response from me is that we can do a lot. What are those lots? I will bring instance from what we do in Sasakawa Africa Association. When SAA Nigeria, when SAA now Global came into Africa, there were 3 white men. Norman Bollon, which was a wheat scientist. Now I want you to follow me in this, my story, because you will realize that Sasakawa Africa Association, which today is an extension-based organization, did not really start with extension workers. Norman Bollon was a wheat scientist. Ryoichi Sasakawa is just a philanthropist from Japan. And Jimmy Carter, who was the president of the United States. So when they came together, they want to provide food for Africa. And when they came to Africa, they met, Jimmy Carter and Ryoichi Sasakawa, they came to Africa and met that wheat science in Norman Bollon. And when they met, how can we ensure that the food system in Africa is resilient? And Norman Bollon said, we have all the validated results, research outputs. He was working in the field, and he was coming up with research output, excellent ones, that can transform the state of agriculture. But after they came together, they said, now we have the tool, we have the information, we have everything. How do we get to the farmer? I am sure before they came to that point, they might have tried, maybe experimented some activities, Maybe taking Nomabolong himself, taking it to the farmer, or maybe the Nekata, with all his office, paraphernalia of office, maybe you can take this to the farmer. You can do that. Maybe they met a brick wall. Then Nomabolong said that the best way to do this is to work with the farmer. And how will they work with the farmer? That was when they identified that unit of extension. And when they realized that, we cannot do this alone, there is a unit, an extension unit, that are actually trained to work with the farmer. Then when I say work, that's FWALK, that is working with the farmer. So they deploy their resources hugely into agricultural extension unit in Africa. And with the vision of Africa feeding Africa. So they felt that Africans, with all the resources we have, we can feed Africa. Now, I don't want to veer too far from my point. I started with the question, do we really know who we are? Can we really do this? Now, when they realized, they said Africa can, and they identified the extension unit. They mobilized hugely to sponsor this, and that was when the Sasakawa Africa Fund for Extension Education started. So when it started, their mission was to provide well-equipped extension, well-informed extension unit for Africa. They followed it up. It really helped. Because as at now, many extension, we have more than 6,000 extension workers trained through that process, which go back to the field, are deployed in the field to disseminate information effectively, appropriately tailored information to farmers. We are still doing that. Now, who we are. If we don't identify that other field of agriculture can do their research, they can come up with brilliant papers, brilliant outcomes on how to save the food system in Nigeria. We must understand that those research outcomes remain on the shelf, like Professor Yaya mentioned. It will continue to be there until we know that we have that responsibility to take it to the field. And that is what Sasakawa is doing. That was what we discussed with Nifaas and Afuas. We must be proactive. We must speak out. We must not allow anybody to say it for us. The vertical relationship, the horizontal partnership, we must leverage this, identify who our partners is, and then we move out. Recently, we identified that one area to strengthen the agricultural extension system is to digitize information. As at, was it last year report, the extension farmer ratio in Nigeria is going to 1 to 10,000. It's alarming. And the more the months, the worse it becomes. Are we going to sit and fold our hands and say, we have the government doing something, we have this other sector in agriculture doing something? This is serious. If we continue with that trend, we will go nowhere. We should be proactive. How can we be proactive in this case? We must identify those areas in the field where we have to address urgently. Extension goes with total package, holistic information. Holistic information in that. You remember Prof mentioned livestock. Most of us have forgotten livestock behind. We have forgotten livestock behind. Meanwhile, there is no farmer in Nigeria today, whether you are into crop or you are into anything that will not have small ruminant goat or sheep, or maybe poultry like myself, and we'll have that at the back of our yard. So why should we be one-sided with our information? We must be holistic. We must go to the field with total package. This is, I want to bring it down again to what we do in Sasakawa Africa Association. I am sure most of us here understand our programmatic engine. We have the regenerative agriculture, We have the nutrition-sensitive agriculture and the market-oriented agriculture. And we have cross-cutting issues like capacity building, e-extension, inclusivity. Now, I said cross-cutting, e-extension. Cross-cutting, capacity building. 3 programmatic areas, I want us to note it. Regenerative agriculture, which has to do with soil. Nutrition-sensitive agriculture, which has to do with what we put in our tummy. All of us have eaten this morning, and we will still eat. Without food, we will not be here. So, the nutrition-sensitive agriculture and the market-oriented agriculture. I have not forgotten that I mentioned something that is where I'm still coming back to, is the digital extension. Now, the cross-cutting issue, which has to be capacity building, e-extension and inclusivity, are also prioritized. Now, how do we do this? We ensure that all the package we take to the field has this information. Everything we package has these 3 information. When we enter a community, we ensure that the soil is addressed, their stomach is addressed, the women there are addressed, the youths are addressed, and the market around them are analyzed. So when we do this, farmers becomes very happy. But in the process of time, we cannot do it alone. It's becoming larger and larger by the day. If we enter a community, we stay in the community for 4 years. As extension workers, you will understand that we cannot stay beyond that because eventually we want to measure the impact. So we give a space. So we leave the community. But we start to analyze, okay, we have 4 years and 4 years, how are we going to go around the country? How it's getting overwhelming. So we partner with Nifaas, with Aaes, we have partners with Agric to build digital extension.
At every point in time I talk about the ADP, I see it as a very well-organized system, decentralized from the headquarters to region, zones, even up to the block or cell level. So, and when they had all the support in terms of funding, they showed results. But once the funding was cut off, the system is now a shadow of itself. And if you look at the system now, the ADP, there are shortage of staff. Some have retired, some have gone to greener pastures, and so many things happened there. There was a time we requested for data of Aaes in all the ADPs across the country. It would surprise you what we saw, that in a state the ADP could only boast of, some of the ADPs could only boast of very few Aaes, and if you look at the age range, you won't even see 30, you see a few 40 and 50s. And you now begin to think about the future of the ADP. Level 14, 15, those are almost directors and assistant directors. Tell me how it will be possible for those ones to go to the field. It's not possible. So the farmers are actually suffering, having no support that should have come from that access. So first of all, we need to ask for engagement of Aaes. There was a study that was done by NARLS looking at the EAFF ratio in the country, and it's a terrible situation, but then I always like to talk about my state. Akwa Ibom State, state-wise, had like 1:24,000 something. But looking at what is happening today, I think there's hope, because I learned in recent times that Governor has stepped in and has declared that ADP should be a stand-alone agency, which means there's going to be engagement of new staff, and life can begin to come up once again. And as a body, even as Nifaas, as the department, we should press for such a thing to happen in almost all the states, in all the states in Nigeria. And I think if that happens, it will be a win-win situation for every one of us, and extension will be alive again. And talking about Farmers Helpline, Farmers Helpline was established in almost all the regions in the country, but most of the times where they are not working again, they complain of funding. And when it comes to funding and release of funds for projects, you know how the system works. But I think NARLS is doing a whole lot in sustaining Farmers Helpline in their location. Talking about the Agric Extension Revitalization Bill, well, where I come from, it is always said that if you are sent on an errand, you don't speak in parables. So I would withhold some information, but I think most of you are already aware of certain information. But what I would want to say concerning that bill, just a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, WOFAN convened stakeholders meeting, and the reason, or one of the aims, was to ensure that they drive home the legislation of the bill, which is still in the National Assembly. Well, you know as well as I do, how they came into the picture, I cannot say. So I would not want to talk about that. And we pray that we should get the bill passed into law. I cannot agree less with the submissions of Prof. Collaboration and more collaborations will take us to the promised land. And let's not work in isolation. Let's collaborate, and I want to believe that will give us an edge and great success.
We just treat, we grade, we use compost,
can see for yourself that so much is being done in ensuring that the agricultural sustainability program is being achieved. On this note, we say thank you for joining us in Advert today for this week. I remain Khadija, who are playing and say bye for now.